Star Trek initially started off with just a 5-year mission, but against all odds, yesterday marked its 50th anniversary. And over the past 5 decades, it has been prolific, as well as inspiring and extremely important in TV history and beyond just TV, after all. Soon, starting next year, the 7th Star Trek TV series will premiere. 7 series, 13 films, hundreds of novels, short stories, and comic books. Numerous video games. Basically, Star Trek video games have existed about as long as there have been video games. Most of them just dreadful, but there have been some good ones as well, and much more. Wherever there is media, wherever there are stories to be told, Star Trek over the past 50 years has spread out into it. Although perhaps most importantly, of course, you do have the TV series. And so I want to talk about what Star Trek is meant to be personally, not over the past 50 years, but over my portion of those 5 decades. But also why I think it's important for the Young Turks and for America, for progressive politics. Because Star Trek, while it is a flawed show in many ways, all of the shows and all of the movies, and sometimes they've been better, sometimes they've been worse, they have from the beginning been driven by a philosophy of curiosity and discovery, openness, diversity, and progress, basically. The beginning point of the show, of all of the shows and all of the movies, is the idea that humanity can become better. And we can become better, we can make the world a better place. And so from the very beginning, it has been a multicultural show. His philosophy is infinite diversity and infinite combinations, or something along those lines. And so way back when the show started 50 years ago, you had a multiracial cast. During the height of the Cold War, you had a member with a heavy, of the crew with a heavy Russian accent. And so from the very beginning, back when TV was way more risk-averse in terms of racial diversity and gender diversity, putting women in positions of authority and influence, Star Trek was doing it. Not equally, of course. In the first series, all of the most important roles were still white men, but it was certainly a good first step. And in the years since then, we've seen even more diversity, with heads of some of the shows being African American or being women. High hopes for the next series as well. Many of you probably know this, but the first ever interracial kiss on television was on Star Trek in November of 1968. A lot of controversy around that, but it was one of the things on television that helped pave the way for more progressive racial relationship dynamics that we are enjoying right now. And when it comes to race, there was a lot of discussion throughout the series about racism. Early on in the first show, there was a planet of aliens where they were split black and white on one side, and they were suppressing those who were split on the opposite way, casting a light on how ridiculous our racial politics have been in America and in many countries around the globe. They didn't shy from racism. They didn't shy from a sort of sci-fi equivalent to AIDS and HIV that made one of the episodes in The Next Generation, discussing that openly back when America really wasn't. They had very early on, back in The Next Generation, a society that was bigoted against transgendered individuals. Back when on TV there was never any discussion about the transgendered condition in America, Star Trek had it. And more importantly perhaps than the discussions about race and gender and sexuality, free will and whether we actually have it, all of that, there was the driving philosophy that not only made it an inspiration to many who watched the shows and movies and read the books growing up, but that also differentiated it from other sci-fi shows and movies of the time. It's the idea that war is not the answer. These are not warships. This is not even technically the military. The crews have always been driven by scientific curiosity and diplomacy, the desire to meet more people, more species, to discover new things, new scientific phenomena. And that has been an inspiration for literally countless scientists that are now operating in America and around the world. Many of the most famous scientists have cited Star Trek as one of the things that got them into their fields. And the idea that we can move into a society that is in many ways a utopia, certainly it has problems and it faces outside threats, but we've largely moved past capitalism. People live their lives driven by the desire to improve themselves and to improve the world. As a progressive, we need more of that. We need to be reminded that that is even possibly a goal in the era of Donald Trump and our worries about how we might be backsliding in numerous ways as a planet. So there's always been this idea that things can get better. And the show has obviously had to change over the years. The newest, the reboot of the movie is very different than the early stuff, but still pretty awesome, even though they've moved away from some of the social commentary. I do have high hopes that the next series will return to that. And certainly as I look back over the show, I am not going to try to pretend that the show hasn't had racist elements, anti-Semitic elements at times, certainly misogynistic elements. That is true, and hopefully the show will continue to improve in those measures. But overall, as a progressive, this is exactly the sort of entertainment, and it was entertaining, that we should be hoping for more of. So overall, happy birthday to Star Trek, and here's to 50 more years. That's my final judgment. Engage.